In September, a man visited the old Finch Avenue Bridge in Scarborough, Ontario, a place long associated with eerie legends and unexplained sightings. According to local folklore, the bridge is haunted by the ghost of a young girl, said to have died tragically near the site decades ago. Some say she was struck by a car. As he explored the area, he took a few photos of the bridge. He later stated that the bridge was completely empty. He saw nothing unusual during his walk. Eventually, he left the bridge without incident. But later, while sharing the photos with friends, they noticed something he hadn't. In one of the shots, a pale figure appeared on the bridge. It hadn't been visible at the scene. When the image was enhanced, the shape became clearer. It seemed to resemble a woman in a long white dress standing motionless on the structure. The man insisted there had been no one else present. A person was walking alone at night through a forested area when they suddenly felt like they were being watched. Looking up into a tree, they noticed a pair of glowing eyes staring down from the branches. At first, they assumed it was an animal and started recording, but as their vision adjusted, the shape appeared more human-like. It didn't blink or move. Only the head and eyes were visible, making it nearly impossible to identify. The person ran the rest of their route, terrified by what they saw. But what did they see? A group of friends were exploring when they came across a cave in an unknown location. While standing near the entrance, they heard something and began recording. Loud screams echoed from deep inside. As the sound grew closer and more intense, the group decided it was best to leave. Once they were safe, they uploaded the footage and asked for explanations, but no one had clear answers. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like something straight out of a horror film. At around 2 a.m., a group of friends was driving along an old back road while recording. The road was dark and empty, with no other vehicles in sight. Then, this happened.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
A figure suddenly ran across the road in front of their car. It moved on all fours and had a humanoid shape. Its body looked human, but the way it moved did not. The group reacted instantly, dropping their phones in shock. What happened after that remains unknown. A man walked into the woods with his dog along a familiar trail.
I guess we need to go the other mission.
At a certain point, the dog suddenly stopped and refused to move forward. It stood still, staring ahead, and even tried to guide its owner back the way they came. This had happened before on the same trail. Instead of forcing the dog to continue, the man chose to turn around. I think that was a smart decision. Sometimes it's best to trust your dog's instincts. This person was hiking through northern Guatemala late at night when he began hearing a strange noise echoing through the darkness. Curious, he decided to investigate and started recording. That's when he spotted it. A humanoid figure with glowing eyes, standing on a nearby hillside. He left the area shortly after. Later, the man said he believed the figure was a howl, a shape-shifting creature from local folklore said to possess both human and animal traits. But what stood out to me the most was how he reacted. He seemed calm, no panic, no yelling. It made me wonder, was it part of a prank, or does this guy just have nerves of steel? Someone was high up in the mountains enjoying the view when they noticed something mind-blowing. As they zoomed in, he saw people hiking down a narrow path along the steep side of a sheer rock face. It looked dangerous and unsafe, leaving him to wonder, why? The YouTube channel The Wandering Woodsman documents hiking trips and locations he explores. On Monday, October 6th, after returning from a backpacking trip to Allegheny National Forest, he went for a short hike at Middle Creek Wildlife Management Area, walking along the Valley View Trail. While descending a long section of the trail, he noticed a man standing nearby.
Now we start heading down. The long climb down. Oh my gosh, there's a guy in this. That is creepy. There's a guy in just his underwear up here.
The sight clearly made him uncomfortable.
Well, that was unexpected. I'm not sure if you saw any of that on camera. I didn't want to film as I got closer, obviously, but just some dude caught a glimpse of him. A little bit more than a glimpse. I mean, he was basically wearing, a pair of thongs for underwear. Literally. I mean, I saw full cheekage and a lot more than I wanted to see elsewhere. As soon as he saw me, though, he put on like a pair of shorts. I'm not sure what was going on there. That is a first for me. I just walked right past him. I didn't say anything. Like, what in the world's going on there? I don't know, was he going to the bathroom? Or why would you have your shorts? He had his shorts completely off, though. Like the shorts over his thongs. I'm not sure what's going on there. That's creepy.
The video of the encounter was later published on October 19th, 2025. It was warm, but not that warm. Feeling strange about the situation, he ended his hike shortly after. Why was this man naked? Would you feel creeped out? A man and his family went camping in a forest for the weekend. The first day was calm, and they prepared to sleep after dark. The area was quiet until a sudden sound broke the silence. A long howl or deep growl echoed through the trees. That sound seemed close. Too close. Not knowing what this was, the man gathered his family and moved them to the car. They left the campsite immediately, and the source of the sound was never identified. A team of geologists was altering rock deposits to study their structure, a task that required careful precision because the formations were unstable. Then, something unexpected happened. The team reacted quickly, and fortunately no one was hurt. The incident highlighted just how unpredictable and fragile rock formations can be, even under expert supervision. In November 2020, experienced hiker and travel blogger Esther Dingley set out alone in the Pyrenees Mountains, which span the border between Spain and France. She spent 6 years traveling Europe in a camper van with her partner, Dan Colgate, documenting their adventures. But this time, she was on a solo hiking trip, something she had done before. On the 21st of November, Esther left the Spanish town of Benasque, heading into the mountains. The next day, 22nd of November, around 4 p.m., she sent her final known message. She had reached the summit of Pic de Sauvegarde, a 2,737 meter peak. She also made a 90-second video call with Dan, describing the views and sounding upbeat. Then, silence. No further contact. No more messages. No sign of Esther. By the 25th of November, when she failed to return, she was officially reported missing. Search teams were launched on both the Spanish and French sides of the mountain, with helicopter patrols covering the rugged terrain. But the weather turned quickly. Heavy snowfall forced the operation to pause in early December. For months, there were no answers, only questions. Did she fall, get caught in a snowstorm, or had something more sinister happened? Then, in July 2021, hikers made a disturbing discovery near Port de la Glaire, just over the French border. They found part of a human skull. On the 30th of July, DNA testing confirmed it was Esther Dingley. Days later, on the 9th of August, search teams located more of her remains and belongings in the same area. And on the 13th of August, investigators released a statement. Her death was most likely the result of an accidental fall. The area where she was found is known for steep, unstable terrain. It is believed she may have fallen from a height of 20 to 30 meters. A tragic and heartbreaking case. A Reddit user was returning home from a hike when he came across a disturbing sight. Scattered among some trash near the trail was what appeared to be a human head. Shocked, he cautiously moved closer, only to discover it wasn't real. It was a lifelike plaster head, eerily detailed. Some users commented that it resembled a death mask, a cast traditionally made after someone's passing. As for its purpose, no one really knows. The Reddit user didn't touch it and simply left it where it was. And honestly, I think that was a smart decision. Audrey was returning home late at night when she heard chanting coming from the woods.
It just keeps going.
The sound echoed from deep within the trees and didn't seem to stop. As she moved closer, the voices grew clearer and louder. Then, without warning, the chanting suddenly stopped. And that's when this happened.
Oh my god!
A figure stepped out from the woods. Audrey ran and managed to escape safely, still unsure of what she had just experienced. In October 2020, 38-year-old Holly Courtier, a mother and experienced hiker from California, set off alone for a visit to Zion National Park in Utah. She had recently lost her job due to the pandemic and was going through personal struggles. According to her family, hiking was her escape, her way to find peace. On October 6th, Holly boarded a park shuttle to the Grotto, a popular stop near the trailhead to Angel's Landing, one of Zion's most visited trails. She told no one her exact plans and left behind her phone to disconnect, according to her daughter. She was supposed to return on a 4:40 p.m. shuttle that day, but she never came back, and no one knew where she had gone. 2 days later, after hearing nothing, her family reported her missing. A massive search and rescue operation was launched, involving drones, tracking dogs, ground teams, and helicopter patrols. Rangers and volunteers covered large portions of the park's rugged landscape. Days passed, and there was no sign of Holly. No gear, no footprints, no sightings. Park rangers warned that conditions were becoming dangerous. Temperatures at night were dropping fast. Still, her daughter, Kaylee, remained hopeful, sharing missing posters online and pleading for help. Then, on October 18th, 12 days after she disappeared, searchers found Holly near the Virgin River, only 0.5 miles or 800 meters from where she had been dropped off. She was reportedly severely dehydrated, had lost between 15 and 18 pounds, and had sustained a head injury. Her daughter said she had been so weak she could barely stand. She was rushed to a hospital and, to everyone's relief, survived. But what began as a feel-good survival story soon took a strange turn. Almost immediately, people began to ask, how did she survive that long so close to the trailhead in a heavily trafficked area without being found? Searchers said they had already searched the exact area where she was located multiple times using helicopters and dogs. The dogs had not picked up a scent. Then came another major concern: the water. Holly's daughter claimed she had survived by drinking water from the Virgin River. But at the time, Zion National Park had issued a toxic cyanobacteria warning, a dangerous blue-green algae bloom that made the water unsafe to drink or even touched. According to medical professionals and outdoor experts, drinking untreated river water contaminated with cyanobacteria for 12 days should have caused serious illness, possibly organ failure or death. Yet Holly had no such symptoms. The inconsistencies led many to believe that Holly hadn't been in that area the entire time, and may have returned there just before being found. Some speculated she had hidden in a cave or had been assisted by someone, possibly staying out of sight during the search. Adding to the suspicion was a GoFundMe campaign launched by her family shortly after her rescue. The campaign raised over $112,000, supposedly for medical bills and Holly's recovery. Some critics questioned the timing and motive, wondering whether the disappearance had been exaggerated or staged to generate sympathy and donations. The story began trending on social media, with many users accusing the family of faking the event or at least withholding details. Amid growing pressure, the Washington County's Sheriff's Office conducted an investigation. In early November 2020, they announced there was no evidence of fraud and no charges were being filed. They confirmed that Holly had been found alive and in need of help, but they could not explain the medical inconsistencies nor her exact movements during the 12 days she was missing. Her daughter maintained that Holly had suffered a mental health episode, possibly triggered by the head injury, and became paranoid, hiding from rescuers because she believed someone was trying to harm her. Holly Courtier has never publicly shared a full account of what happened during those 12 days in Zion. Some believe it was a case of genuine survival under bizarre circumstances. Others believe we still don't know the full story. Did she truly survive alone in the wilderness for nearly 2 weeks? Or was she somewhere else, waiting to return? The case of Holly Courtier remains one of the most debated wilderness rescues in recent memory. An explorer was in the desert when he noticed several vehicles escorting a truck carrying a large object. They stopped at a secure site and set up equipment. Technicians began running repeated tests around the subject. The location was isolated and restricted.
So I quickly grabbed my camera and shot handheld for the rest of this.
At first glance, what they captured looked unusual, almost like a UFO. However, the site was identified as the Lockheed Martin Helendale Radar Cross-Section Facility in California. Engineers there test how easy it is for radar to see aircraft. They put planes or parts on raised platforms and shine radar signals at them. Sensors measure how much of the signal bounces back. This helps engineers figure out how visible the aircraft is and make changes to make it harder to detect. Basically, it's all part of developing stealth aircraft. Not a UFO, but I can imagine the confusion. TikToker Julia Wang _HTX filmed a sleigh ride in the mountains at Deer Valley, saying only her family and 2 adult drivers were there. When she later reviewed the video, she heard an unfamiliar voice.
Hello, Daddy.
A little warmer over there.
It clearly said, "Hello, Daddy."
Hello, Daddy. Hello, Daddy. Hello, Daddy.
Her daughter's mouth is not moving when the voice is heard. Her son's mouth is partly covered, and when he speaks later, his voice sounds muffled and different in tone. She claims the voice has a British or Victorian-style accent that neither child has. After reviewing the footage several times, she says she cannot find a logical explanation for the sound. Can you? In 2017, 25-year-old David O'Sullivan left his home in County Cork, Ireland, chasing a dream shared by many adventurers to hike the entire Pacific Crest Trail. A grueling 2,650-mile journey stretching from Campo, California, all the way to the Canadian border. He was deeply inspired by the idea of walking alone through some of North America's most breathtaking and unforgiving wilderness. David began his hike on March 22nd, starting at the southern end of the trail near the US-Mexico border. He planned to complete the trail in 6 months, but unlike most thru-hikers, David didn't carry a working phone. Instead, he used a Kindle with Wi-Fi to email his family whenever he could find internet access. That decision would later become a key issue in the mystery that followed. On April 6th, David checked into the Idlewild Inn, a small lodge in the mountain town of Idlewild, California, not far from the San Jacinto Mountains, one of the trail's most dangerous sections, known for its steep terrain, snow, and unpredictable weather. He stayed 2 nights and sent an email to his family, saying he was returning to the trail. What nobody knew was that it would be his final message. When he left the inn, he forgot his Kindle charger, cutting off his only way to communicate. He was supposed to meet a family friend in Santa Barbara the following month, but he never showed up. Weeks passed, then months, and no one heard from David again. In July 2017, David's family officially reported him missing. They flew from Ireland to California, determined to retrace his last known steps. Authorities confirmed that David had checked out of the inn on April 7th and had also visited a nearby library, likely to use Wi-Fi before heading back to the trail. From there, it's believed he rejoined the Pacific Crest Trail, heading north into the San Jacinto Mountains. Despite multiple search operations involving helicopters, rescue dogs, and ground teams, no trace of David has ever been found. No gear, no footprints, no bank activity, no confirmed sightings, nothing. Many believe David may have become lost or injured, or possibly slipped off trail and was caught in a snowstorm. It's possible he suffered a fatal accident and his body hasn't been discovered. But without evidence, the truth remains unknown. David's parents and sister have returned to California multiple times since his disappearance. They've spoken with hikers, park rangers, and locals, distributed flyers, and coordinated with law enforcement. A reward has been offered for any information, and the family continues to hope, not for a miracle, but for closure. To them, the hardest part isn't knowing what happened, it's not knowing anything at all. At 3 a.m., a hiker was walking through the woods when they came across something deeply unsettling. Ahead of them stood a tree with various objects hanging from its branches, items that were deliberately placed. The tree was most likely what's known as an offering tree, a practice found in different cultures and belief systems where objects are left as offerings, symbols, or ritual markers. Still, encountering something like this alone in the woods, in the middle of the night, is enough to make anyone uneasy. The hiker didn't stay long. They left the area without disturbing anything, but the image of that tree stayed with them long after. Someone was driving on a bridge when they noticed something strange on the side and recorded a video, hoping to figure it out later. At first, nothing appears unusual in the footage, but when it's slowed down, a man's upper body seems to appear on the bridge. His body appears to merge with the structure for a brief moment. What is going on here? The video continues to circulate without a clear explanation. If you have one, feel free to share. A Facebook user wrecked his truck and took a photo of the damaged vehicle after he got home at around 2:45 a.m. At the time, he didn't notice anything unusual. The next day, he sent the photo to a friend. The friend asked who was sitting in the passenger seat. Confused, the user looked at the image again and couldn't explain what he was seeing. A strange shape appeared in the passenger side window, something that to him looked like a face with a raised hand, possibly holding a revolver. The user insisted he was alone that night, and there was nothing inside the truck that could explain it. Some commenters said the figure even resembled a clown. The image still unsettles the user. Reddit user Lauren Blake was enjoying a peaceful hike when they got the shock of their life. Lying on the ground was what looked like a severed human figure. But fortunately, after taking a closer look, they realized it wasn't what it seemed. It was actually a rock, carefully painted to look just like a human finger. Complete with skin tones and a detailed fingernail, the illusion was disturbingly realistic. Whoever made it clearly has some serious talent and a dark sense of humor. During a hike in Arizona, a man spotted some unusual cloud formations and quickly recorded the strange sight. Wondering how this could be possible, he shared the footage online.
Oh, ain't that cool? Look at them clouds.
Most people said they had never seen anything like it, and some even speculated whether cloud seeding might be involved. But after digging deeper, the real explanation began to emerge. What he captured were Kelvin Helmholtz waves, a rare and beautiful cloud formation. According to earthsky.org, these waves typically form on windy days when there's a difference in velocity between two layers of air, similar to wind blowing over water. When the upper layer of air moves faster than the layer below, and there's a difference in air density, the clouds can roll into dramatic, wave-like shapes. The phenomenon is named after physicists Lord Kelvin and Hermann von Helmholtz, who studied the science behind it. Reddit user professional_self296 was hiking in Nevada when he stumbled across something unusual in the middle of nowhere. A tree was completely covered in shoes, modern ones, and even some that looked like they dated back to the 1800s or early 1900s. Apparently, it has become a roadside landmark. Drivers stop by and toss even more shoes onto it. But how something like this ever started, and why it caught on, remains a mystery. Between 1945 and 1950, a series of strange disappearances occurred in southern Vermont, centered around the remote wilderness near the Green Mountain National Forest and the Long Trail. The cases were separated by years, yet shared unsettling similarities. The first disappearance happened in November 1945. An experienced hunting guide named Middy Rivers vanished near an area known as Hell Hollow while leading a group. Rivers briefly stepped ahead of the party and was never seen again. Search teams found no trace, not even footprints, despite Rivers' deep familiarity with the terrain. Less than a year later, in December 1946, Paula Jean Weldon, an 18-year-old college student, disappeared while hiking the Long Trail near Glastonbury Mountain. Multiple witnesses saw her on the trail that afternoon. She simply vanished in clear conditions. An extensive search involving state police, the FBI, and hundreds of volunteers turned up nothing. Her body was never found. In December 1949, another baffling case followed. James E. Tedford, a 68-year-old war veteran, disappeared while riding a bus from St. Albans to Bennington. Witnesses saw him sleeping in his seat. His belongings were still on the bus when it arrived, but Tedford himself was gone. The bus never stopped in the area where he vanished. Then, in October 1950, 8-year-old Paul Jepson disappeared from his family farm near the same region. His mother had briefly left him alone while feeding animals. When she returned, Paul was gone. Tracking dogs reportedly lost his scent on a nearby road. Later that same month, Frida Langer, an experienced hiker, went missing after briefly separating from her group near Somerset Reservoir. She had gone ahead to return to camp and never returned. After months of searching, her body was found in an area that had already been thoroughly searched, raising even more questions. Of all the cases, only Frida Langer's remains were ever recovered. The others were never solved. Over time, the cluster of disappearances became associated with what locals and researchers later referred to as the Bennington Triangle, a term used to describe a region where people seem to vanish without explanation. No single cause has ever been proven, and it leaves one lingering question. What could be going on in these woods? These people were visiting a cemetery late at night. While driving through the grounds, they recorded video of the experience, just in case they captured something unusual. At the time, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But later, while reviewing the footage at home, they noticed something strange. A pale shape seemed to appear between the tombstones. It looked unsettling, almost like a figure. But after watching the footage over and over, I noticed what was actually causing the illusion. A smudge is visible at the bottom of the windshield, and the shifting shapes align perfectly with that area. As light moves across the glass, the shapes move with it. And for more trail encounters, just watch this next video.